Welcome to Balance. Today, we're going to talk about anxieties and stress. That might sound surprising, but it's not the goal to get rid of stress. The goal is about having the right kind of stress if possible. We need stimulation. We need a stress that is stimulatory. It is a moderate stressor, moderate challenge, and it is transient, so it doesn't go for too long. Part of us needs to feel safe when we are experiencing any stressor. So first, we're going to talk about the safe space, and then we're going to talk about the stressor. The stressor I'm going to call probably a challenge. That sounds a little bit better than a stress. Of course, we as human beings experience stress that we very often don't have a control over. Whether this is our position in minority, whether there are our financial circumstances, whether this stress is connected to our families. But there is a part of the stress that we do have control over, and it's very important to exercise the right control in right circumstances and letting go and having something in place for those parts that are uncontrollable and very stressful. So let's talk about the safe space first. When we feel stressed, the fact that part of us feels safe is very important. Children can't play and experience their creativity when they feel stress. And absence of play is a serious problem, not only for children, but also for adults, family, relationships. And by play, I understand that creative, unstructured engagement. Now let's come back to families. Some people feel safe in their families and they feel nurtured and connected, and that is a great gift from life for them. Some don't have that feel of connection and safety in their families. The good news is that you don't need to feel safe within your families to establish a sense of safety in your life. And by sense of safety, I understand emotional safety. That's very important. If you're not safe physically, then you need to undertake appropriate action. We're talking here about a sense of emotional safety, a sense of safety that helps to balance stress in life. So, when you don't feel safe within your family, emotionally, not feeling connected, you might want to invest in finding a space or an organization or friendship around a certain cause that will give you that sense of connection and safety. I remember in my teens and in 20s, I felt very connected to scouting. And that gave me a sense of some sort of play, connection, sense of safety, some sort of experimentation with my skills. I was also connected to a Dominican monastery. We lived in my teens and in my childhood close to a Dominican monastery. And that place and the monks, the fathers, gave that special sense of connection. When I moved places, moved towns or countries, I've never really experienced that level of safety. But what I've done, I've been living in London for last 20 years. My sense of safety is located in my own home. You might need to find your own space, whether it's a bedroom, organization, whether it's your favorite park, your favorite walk. your favorite city or your favorite part of the city or town that you don't want to move away from, that you know every single corners in that space. You know how the seasons changes in that space and the lights penetrates the streets. That give a sense of safety. Let's come back to stress. I would like you to think about stress as a challenge. And it's much easier to think about it as a challenge when you're undertaking certain stress and you feel like there is a goal at the end. Because that sort of stress releases dopamine, a pleasure pathway. And there is also an anticipation of the reward, of the goal at the end. It doesn't need to be a rigid goal. Please remember that chronic stress depletes one of dopamine, and it might even lead to anhedonia, which is just an absence of feelings. So short stress, when it's presented as a challenge, it activates joy. A long-term chronic stress, it might lead to all sorts of health conditions. We want to be stimulated and withstand difficult situations. At the same time, we want to avoid chronic stress. We also don't want to create a world when there is no stress at all. For example, personalities that manage unknown with rigidity. They look like they would be happy, but what's happening is they work very hard to create a world when there is no stress. The glucocorticoids are elevated in prefrontal cortex. Conditions that are very stressful and very difficult to manage. Financial difficulties, poverty, positions in minority, health conditions, social and political changes. These create chronic pain and chronic stress, and there is really no answer how to manage them. Let's think about how to create a balance between challenge, stress, with nourishing sense of safety. Sense of safety, in my experience, is a feeling safe on the inside with physical sensations on the outside. As I mentioned before, whether it's a room, house, home, place of worship, community building, there is some sort of spiritual alignment with the place that brings you joy, light, and sense of connection. What can help us to cope with stress better? Of course, something we don't have any control over is nourishing parenting style that we were offered. And something to think about if we have children, to offer that nourishing parenting style to our children through touch, hugs, tone of voice sometimes, and offer it with love, but at the same time with establishing boundaries. In our world, relationships, especially with our partner, relationship that is filled with kindness, gentleness, using kind words to each other, making sure that we are committed and we're not sabotaging in any way the stability of the relationship, and that we offer a genuine concern for others' well-being. Healthy lifestyle, a right amount of sleep, a right amount of movement during the day, something that you really like doing, and it can be a part of your life. For example, walking to your workplace if you can do that. Diet is very important, how you feed your brain and body. And having a time dedicated for reflection, meditation, or prayer. There are people who love meditating and would do it anytime, anywhere. And there are people who feel like they would have a heart attack if they had to meditate. Balance meditations, these meditations that you're accessing through this program, are designed for you to do them wherever you are, whatever you're doing. If you like to sit down or lie down or sit in your favorite armchair with your favorite beverage, that is a perfect place. If you like walking or if you commute to your work, that's a fantastic place to do it. Adapt them to your lifestyle. The goal is not to just do them. The goal is for you to experience balance, and after that, experience a moment when things are just right. Let's come back to managing stress. Remember to never catastrophize, to try to predict the outcome of your situations. You can plan, you can wait and delay gratification until something happens. Someone said once that hope is a practical action to get what you need in life. So be hopeful, but don't allow yourself to catastrophize and prepare for millions outcomes that are negative. Rather, stay in present moment, work with what is, because the future is an outcome of a present moment. When you catastrophize, your body releases a huge amount of glucocorticoids. They are steroid hormones, and they play a pivotal role in the glucose, protein, and fat metabolism in your body, and you don't want to have that dysregulated. Long-term, badly managed stress will cause all sorts of health conditions. It helps when you put yourself in a position when you are having control over what is controllable. For example, there was a study when patients with chronic conditions were allowed to self-medicate in hospital settings. So instead of waiting for nurses and for times of get the pain medication, instead of that, they had their medications on drips. Of course, there was a concern that they will overuse the pain medication. What's happened was that they use less than normal of the medication. There are things that help and things that don't help. For example, there was a study of parents of children with cancer. And those who didn't have some sort of religious or spiritual background or framework, it was much more difficult for them to control the level of stress. But for those who had a religious framework and have thoughts that no matter how difficult it will be, they won't be on their own, it was much easier and less detrimental to their health to be in the place or in the situation of chronic stress. In the Balance program, I'm suggesting that you will make some sort of friendship with the life that lives you. Whether it's just a friendship when you are trying to trust the breath and you're trying to trust that life that lives you, or a sort of friendship when you are feeling that the life that lives you is full of love and compassion, and perhaps even a bit of humor, or that life that lives you gives you so much power to decide what you're doing and how you're managing your body. I hope that long term, with practicing balance, with balancing the opposite affect, you will be able to respond to any challenges, even to death. My husband reminded me yesterday about a dialogue between Peter Pan and Captain Hook, when Captain Hook said, "Prepare to die, Peter." And Peter Pan said, "To die will be an awfully big adventure." It just makes me smile when I'm thinking about that. Haruki Murakami said that death is not the opposite of life, but a part of it. And please remember to celebrate successes. Celebrating successes is such an important part for being alive. I'm wondering now how psychotherapy can help. Psychotherapy can help you to differentiate between neutral and threatening things in life. What doesn't help is when one can't differentiate between what's neutral and what's threatening, because your flight or fight response will be switched when something is just simply neutral. And I'm hoping that the balance program slowly will be helping you to recognize what's neutral and what's threatening. What comes to my mind now is a female counselee who I saw this week. On Monday, actually. On Sunday, she dreamt about a snake at work. First, she asked her colleague to handle the snake, and then in her dream, she had to handle the snake. She woke up fearful and confused why on earth there were snakes in her workplace and why on earth she felt she needed to handle them. She has let herself to stay with these feelings and to work with them in therapy, especially that managing stress at work is part of her goal. And in this program, I will be calling the technique tapping, and you can use that sort of techniques on your own. This is a technique that sort of merge between EMDR and actual tapping. So when she was using that technique, she found out, or that technique led her to work with imagery that came to her mind. And when she started with the image of snake, and that image slowly turned into presenting in front of her male bosses. This was something that was very stressful that she experienced at work. She also grew up with a narcissistic father with violent outbursts. When she was working with that image and she was still tapping on her body, an opposite slowly emerged, and that opposite affect and opposite image came to her mind, and it was an image of a tree that symbolized groundedness, stability, and she felt sense of safety and hope in her body. This is a one way how you can manage your fears, especially the ones that come with imagery. I will be guiding you through certain affects. In the next session, we will be talking about affect and how affect can present itself in imagery. And we can work with that imagery, and the purpose of that work is to balance that affect in your body. So in this case, the belief that stressed her was that her male boss or male bosses were threatening, when in fact they weren't as threatening, they were more confusing and presenting mixture of competence and in certain areas and incompetence in others. I also remember working with a young male, and he experienced anxieties in large meetings with his male boss and also in one-to-one meetings with him. It turned out that he projected onto his boss his fear of rejection. He was scared that he will be rejected by his manager and he will lose his job. He was permanently employed and very good at his job, but his father left the family when he was 2. These are examples of unconscious beliefs that we project onto external environment, and those beliefs make us feel under a huge amount of stress. Balance meditation and balance program will help you to deal with that sort of stress. And lastly, psychosocial stress is also a huge part of our life. And about that, I'll be talking in a section called Affect. Bye for now, and I'll see you in the next session. Thank you.